I slammed the car door like it had personally insulted me, grabbed my weekend bag, and thought, finally, 3 days of peace. Just me, my villa, and the faint hope I wouldn't get food poisoning from my own cooking. 2 hours in traffic. Worth it just to see Lake Tahoe's sparkling waters again. Crystal clear. Refreshing. Unlike my family, apparently. But the universe, God bless it, had other plans. 2 figures in white bathrobes stood on my terrace, sipping coffee like they owned the place. One was my daughter Kelly, looking smug. The other was her husband Palmer, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. A dentist's waiting room, a motorway service station loo, anywhere. What the hell? I muttered, my bag slipping through my hands like the will to live. Kelly straightened up, her face settling into that expression children reserve for their parents once they've hit adulthood. A mixture of contempt and pity. Dad, you can't stay here, she shouted, like she was tossing scraps to a dog. Palmer and I are having a romantic weekend. A romantic weekend. In my villa. The one I bought. The one I bled 3 decades of 12-hour shifts for. The one her mother and I decorated down to the bloody light switches. But Kelly, this is my villa, I said, feeling ridiculous for even having to explain it, like reminding someone the sky is blue. I don't care, she clinked her mug down, the sound so sharp it could have doubled as a threat. We were here first. We're not leaving. Palmer mumbled something inaudible, probably, please don't drag me into this, before Kelly waved him off like a disobedient butler. She tugged her robe shut with the kind of angry jerk that said I'd ruined the vibe. Honey, I just wanted to spend the weekend. I tried. Get out of here and don't bother us. She shouted it so hard, I half expected the bloody lake to echo it back. In the way. That's what she said. Me. The man who paid for her university, her car, her wedding. Apparently just background furniture in her new, little rom-com fantasy. I stood there, bag at my feet, staring at the girl who used to climb onto my lap for bedtime stories. The girl who'd cried into my chest at her mother's funeral. Now apparently auditioning for the role of evil landlord's daughter in a budget soap opera. Palmer avoided my eyes, his face going red above his collar. Kelly looked triumphant. And me? I was 62, being evicted from my own bloody property. Fine, I said, the word like ashes in my mouth. Good, Kelly snapped back. And next time? Call first. Call first. To use my own villa. Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Next time, I'll also book a ticket to sit on my own sofa. Shall I? I walked back to the car, legs trembling like I'd just been to war. In the rearview mirror, I saw them clink their mugs together, celebrating my defeat like a pair of villains in a pantomime. My daughter raised her cup, toast or goodbye, who knows, while I drove off like some tragic extra in my own life story. 3 days later, I was back home, drinking lukewarm coffee, chewing on a dinner that tasted of loneliness and resignation. I kept expecting the phone to ring with an apology. Instead, it rang with something far worse. Dad, Kelly's voice. Cold. Businesslike. The kind of tone you use when you're canceling a direct debit. The villa now belongs to Palmer's parents. I froze, mug halfway to my mouth. What? Carl and Margaret Thompson. It's their home now. You're forbidden from going there anymore. Forbidden. Like a child grounded for stealing biscuits. Except I was 62, and it was my bloody villa. Kelly, have you lost your mind? Actually, I can. And I am. You hardly use it anyway, and they need housing. I nearly choked. 30 years of work, gone. Just so Palmer's parents, complete strangers, could prance about in my dream home. It's my villa. I exploded. You're being selfish, she snapped. After everything we've done for you since Mum died. Everything they've done for me? I paid her debts, her flat deposit, her wedding, her car. But sure, yes, they've carried me through. Saints, the lot of them. That's what fathers do, she cut me off. Besides, you're old and alone. What do you need a villa for? Old. Alone. Like she was reading out the headline of my obituary. No, I said, voice steady now. Silence. Then her shocked voice. What did you just say? I said no. Kelly, you can't just take my villa. You can't say no to me. Oh, but I just did. Her composure cracked. Palmer's parents have been struggling financially, and you're hoarding property you barely visit. Hoarding. My villa is apparently now a tin of beans at the back of the pantry. Ridiculous. They can find their own housing solutions, I told her, my grip on the phone so tight I thought it might snap. Because the villa stays mine. I can't believe how selfish you become. Kelly screeched down the line, hitting that pitch reserved exclusively for entitled children and malfunctioning car alarms. Mum would be ashamed of you. Oh, there it was. The nuclear button. Mum's memory, whipped out like some emotional credit card she thought would never decline. Except this time? Declined. Overdrawn. Blocked for fraud. Your mother, I said quietly, would be horrified by what you become. Silence. Just her breathing in, sharp, scandalized, like I'd slapped her with a wet fish. How dare you? And then click. I hung up. For the first time in 3 years, I hung up on my daughter. Felt like slamming a door in a soap opera. Dramatic, a little pathetic, but God, it was satisfying. Of course, the phone rang immediately. Kelly again. Persistent as a bloody Jehovah's Witness. I turned it off. Let her scream into the void. Sleep? Don't make me laugh. I sat in my leather chair until past midnight, replaying her words on loop like some twisted greatest hits album. Selfish. Ashamed. Old and alone. The silence wasn't peaceful anymore. It felt loaded, like something was finally about to snap. By morning, it had. Clarity with the sunrise. Coffee in hand, laptop open. I turned into a middle-aged vigilante. Property law, California statutes, legal transfer requirements, all the riveting bedtime stories you could want. Turns out I'd built half the city, but now I was building a case against my own offspring. Cheers for that, life. Kelly kept texting all day. Dad, we need to talk about yesterday. Delete. Don't be stubborn about this. Delete. Palmer's parents are coming to see the villa this weekend. Oh, that one I read twice, just to really feel the insult. Then, delete. Wednesday, I went to see Marcus Chun, my lawyer. 15 years on the job with me. Sharp, calm, diplomatic. Exactly the sort of man you want when your daughter's trying to stage a coup on your property. Fred, he said, shaking my hand, polished as ever. Good to see you. How can I help? I need to discuss property protection. I paused, like I was confessing to a crime. Family member. Marcus blinked, all professional, but with that look in his eyes. The one doctors get before saying, we've found a lump. Yes, I admitted. He nodded, more serious now. That complicates things. Understatement of the year, Marcus. We went through trusts, LLCs, ownership protections. Very thrilling. I was scribbling notes like I was back at uni, except this exam was about keeping my life from being repossessed by my daughter's in-laws. How quickly? I asked. A few days for basics. 2 to 3 weeks for something solid. 2 to 3 weeks. Kelly had already penciled in her bloody open house for Saturday. Marcus studied me, sharp as ever. Fred, is someone trying to force you off your own property? Yes. And just like that, Marcus dropped the polite act. He looked ready to draft legal nukes. Then we start immediately. Bring me every document you've got. Threats. Coercion. That's what he called it. Funny really, I'd just been calling it Tuesday. In the lift down to the car park, I caught my reflection. Same 62-year-old man, but the eyes were different. Determined. Angry. Dangerous even. Naturally, the phone rang again. Kelly. This time, I answered. Finally, she snapped. We need to resolve this childish nonsense. The only nonsense, I said, calm as a monk with a gin habit, is you thinking you can steal my villa. Steal? How dare you use that word with me? What would you call it then? Borrowing with intent to never return. She hesitated, recalibrating. Then came the guilt trip, polished and rehearsed. Palmer's parents are struggling. Margaret lost her job. Carl's pension barely covers their rent. Ah yes. Sympathy mode. The same trick she used at 16 when she wanted concert tickets. Only back then, the stakes weren't 30 years of my life savings. That's unfortunate, I said, but it doesn't give them the right to my villa. You could be generous. Show some family spirit. Oh, Like the family spirit you showed me when you threw me out of my own house. Silence. Then she tried again. That was we were just surprised to see you there. In my property. Which I own. That one. You should have called first. The circular logic was so dizzying, I nearly needed to lie down. Kelly, I'm not giving anyone my villa. That's final. Fine, she spat, voice sharp as a whip. But Palmer's parents are still coming Saturday. They've already made travel arrangements. And then, click. She hung up on me. I stood by my car, phone still pressed to my ear, listening to the dial tone like it had all the answers. Above me, the perfect San Diego sky. Mocking me. For days until Palmer's parents showed up like holidaymakers at a bloody B&B. Back home, I stared into a cold coffee. Kelly's words replayed. Palmer's parents are still coming Saturday. Coming to look at it. Like my villa was already theirs. When exactly had I stopped being Kelly's dad and become her personal cash machine? The memories lined up like a billing statement. Her wedding. Dad, we just need a bit of help. 15 grand, gone. Palmer's car. Dad, reliable transport so important. 25 grand, gone. Her gratitude? Non-existent. She barely looked up from her phone when I handed over the keys. Elizabeth's voice whispered from memory. Be patient with her, Fred. But patience had expired. Elizabeth had been gone 3 years, and Kelly wasn't grieving anymore. She was cashing in. Exploitation. That's what it was. Not grief, not family obligation. Good old-fashioned, calculated exploitation. My daughter had clocked me as a grieving idiot desperate for scraps of connection, and she'd been cashing in like I was her personal scratch card. I stood up from my chair, knees cracking like a bloody bonfire, and looked around my study. Awards, photos, contracts, proof that I could negotiate my way through cutthroat business deals, build half a city, charm clients, and outweak competitors. Yet somehow, when it came to my only child, I'd been reduced to a walking ATM with a pulse. And the answer sat right there on my desk. Elizabeth's photo. Smiling at me, sunlight in her gray hair, caught at the villa on our last holiday. In 3 years since she'd gone, I'd said yes to everything. Tuition? Yes. Loans? Yes. Wedding? Yes. The bloody SUV for Palmer? Yes. All in the desperate hope that saying no wouldn't make my daughter pack up the last shreds of family and leave me with the echo of my own loneliness. But here's the kicker. Family don't loot your estate while you're still alive. That's not grief. That's a smash and grab. Pattern recognition, my old party trick. In business, it made me rich. With Kelly, it just made me nauseous. The pattern was so clear it should have come with PowerPoint slides. Every request bigger, every thank you smaller, every conversation more like a transaction. I thought I'd been a good father. No. I'd been conditioning her like some tragic Pavlovian experiment. Ring bell, demand money. Dad salivates cash. The clock chimed 8, all sharp and smug. For days until Palmer's parents rolled up at my villa with measuring tape and a bloody IKEA catalog. Ready to turn 30 years of sacrifice into their dream retirement nest. Elizabeth's voice, the one I used to cling to, was nowhere now. No patient whispers. Just my own voice, finally cutting through the fog. Stop being a victim. Sleep? Forget it. By 11, I'd done the shower, the teeth, even read the bloody sports section. My brain still refused to switch off. So instead of sheep, I counted days. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. By midnight, it was a full construction contract in my head. Break it down. Identify the critical path. Assign resources. I wasn't grieving anymore. I was drafting war plans. And Kelly, bless her, had made a rookie error. She'd given me a deadline. Amateur mistake. First rule of project management. The client who reveals their timeline first loses. She'd set Sunday, which meant something external was pressing them. Expiring lease, movers booked, whatever. I had 6 days. And 6 days, to me, was a bloody eternity. I remembered Frank Morrison, 1998. Thought he could squeeze me out of the Harbor District project with threats and rumors. He swaggered about like he'd already won. Meanwhile, I was quietly signing contracts with his subcontractors. By the time his timeline collapsed, I was there with the only solutions left, at triple the price. History doesn't repeat, it bloody rhymes. And my daughter was rhyming loud. Buzz. A text. Kelly again. Dad, Palmer's parents found a moving company for Sunday. Please don't make this harder than it needs to be. The audacity was breathtaking. She'd already booked movers for my property. I was almost impressed. That's negotiation 101. Act like the deal's already closed, even when you're bluffing. Only problem? I'd seen that trick before, back in 2003. Tony Bloody Castellanos tried to redevelop a property he didn't even own. He ended up learning the hard way that confidence is not the same as ownership rights. Kelly was about to learn the same lesson. Delete. Phone down. Mind worrying. Resources, substantial financial assets, Marcus the lawyer, 30 years of business contacts, and Derek next door, the bloke with questionable IT skills, who owed me a favor. Timeline, 6 days. Execution, Sunday. Desired outcome? Not just stopping the theft. No, a complete reversal. I wanted Kelly to choke on the taste of consequences. I wanted Palmer's parents to regret ever packing their bloody tape measure. By 1 a.m, I was actually smiling. Elizabeth used to tease me about my ruthless streak. Said it only came out when someone pushed me too far. Well, Kelly had pushed. And now she was going to see it. You're too nice 95% of the time, Elizabeth once told me. But that other 5%? Absolutely terrifying. Well, Kelly had never met that 5%. Poor girl. She was about to get the deluxe package. By 2 a.m, the framework was solid. Derek for tech on Tuesday, Marcus for legal on Wednesday, prep Thursday and Friday. Then Saturday, I'd pop up to Tahoe to play the dutiful, pathetic father one last time. Sunday morning? Oh, Sunday morning would bring a very different Fred Martinez. The sort of Fred that made developers wet themselves and suppliers suddenly remember their contracts. Tuesday morning, I woke up at 7, buzzing like a teenager before prom. Shower, coffee, best suit of armor. False cheer. 9 sharp, I wandered over to Derek's. My neighbor, mid-30s, jeans older than his career, Silicon Valley t-shirt that probably hadn't been washed since the iPhone 6 launched. Behind his glasses, that glazed, half-human look of a man who hasn't seen natural sunlight or human affection since Christmas. Fred, everything okay? He asked, probably assuming I'd come to complain about his Wi-Fi signals giving me cancer. Actually, Derek, I need your help with a creative technical project. Translation. I want to terrify some entitled strangers in my house until they either cry or sue me. Possibly both. He lit up immediately, like I'd just invited him to Comic-Con. What kind of project? Home automation, I said casually. Motion sensors, voice assistants, maybe some lighting effects. A surprise for unexpected guests. Derek practically swiveled out of his chair like a toddler on Haribo. Haunted house setup? Smart home with theatrical elements. Close enough. Fred, this sounds like something from a horror movie. When do we start? And that's how 2 hours later, I found myself loading Derek's SUV with enough electronics to rewire the Pentagon. Motion detectors, LED strips, wireless speakers, hidden cameras, water controllers, a bloody tablet that looked like it could hack MI6. All to scare my daughter and her in-laws. Honestly, I should have been sectioned. The drive to Tahoe flew by, with Derek gushing like a child describing his new Lego set. We can program cascading responses, he beamed. Motion triggers lights. Lights trigger voices. Voices trigger water systems. The whole house becomes interactive. Oh joy, I thought. Nothing says welcome home, like your father's villa transforming into Alton Tower's budget cousin. By the time we arrived, Derek was nearly vibrating with excitement. We can even add facial recognition if you want to target specific guests. Tempting, but I didn't want my daughter's smug fiancé Palmer immortalized in my CCTV files forever. One lawsuit at a time. We unpacked, and Derek was in his element, scampering about like a caffeinated rat, planting sensors, programming sequences, hiding cameras behind bookshelves. Motion detector here. he chirped, mounting one in the entryway. As soon as someone walks in, light strobe and Alexa shouts, "You are not the owners of this house. Leave immediately." "And if they don't?" I asked, suddenly quite enjoying this. "Oh, then phase 2, Derek said, eyes glittering like a man who hasn't been touched by a woman since dial-up internet. "Every faucet and shower in the house goes off at once. Plus the messages escalate." I had to admit it was genius. Legal genius, at that. Everything was just smart home features. Stupidly aggressive, slightly unhinged smart home features. But still. We tested it. I walked through the door, lights started strobing like a Poundland nightclub, and the voice boomed. "This property belongs to Fred Martinez. You are trespassing. Leave now." 30 seconds later, it ramped up. Warning. Security system activated. Authorities notified. Vacate immediately. Faucets roared to life. Every tap in the house gushing like Niagara Falls. I clapped. Actual applause. "Brilliant," I said. And I meant it. "The best part," Derek said smugly, "battery backup. They can't just pull the main breaker. You control everything from your phone. You're basically God now." And I thought, finally, a religion I can get behind. By 3 o'clock, the villa was rigged tighter than an MI5 sting operation. Cameras, strobe, sirens, showers. It was less holiday home and more psychological warfare center. Packing up, Derek couldn't resist asking, "So, Fred, when are these mystery guests arriving?" "Sunday morning," I said. "And they're really not expecting this?" I pictured Kelly's smug little text about the movers. "Let's just say they think they're moving in." Derek laughed so hard it echoed through the empty villa. His laughter sounded like freedom. Mine sounded like revenge. Perfect. That's what Derek called it, anyway. Me? I called it revenge theater with Wi-Fi. We worked like lunatics all morning. Derek was happily installing projectors in every main room, programming them to cast creepy shadows that paced just out of sight. Even in daylight, it looked like Satan's Airbnb. He beamed as he explained it. Psychological impact, Fred. The brain sees patterns where there aren't any. Yes, Derek. It's called being human. Or, in my daughter's case, being greedy with a side of entitlement. While he fiddled with shadows, I set up the audio. He'd brought professional-grade speakers the size of thimbles, and a sound library that could make you need therapy. Footsteps in empty corridors. Whispers in locked rooms. Wind howling through closed windows. Basically, if The Shining had a Spotify playlist, this was it. By lunchtime, my peaceful villa looked like it had been auditioning for a Netflix horror special. We decided it needed a warning sign just for legal polish. My idea of trespassers will be emotionally traumatized didn't pass muster, so we settled on, "Welcome to the house of the future. Enter at your own risk." Perfectly professional, with just enough tech demo energy to avoid lawsuits. The afternoon was chaos testing. Derek stomped through each room shouting, "Motion detected," while the villa went full poltergeist. Strobe lights flashing, shadows pacing, faucets gushing, Alexa declaring, "Leave immediately. You don't belong here." It was like living in a rave hosted by Satan's HR department. "How long will this run?" I asked, because frankly, I wanted it to last forever. "Continuously," Derek said proudly. 30-second pauses if they try to hide. So the system didn't just scare people, it mocked them. Glorious. By evening, every room was wired. Every sensor perfectly tuned. Cameras hidden. Backup batteries humming away like smug little insurance policies. And with one final flourish, Derek handed me control through my phone. Live feeds, overrides, everything at my fingertips. I had to stop myself from stroking it like Gollum. This, Derek sighed, packing his gear with visible heartbreak, is the most sophisticated home automation I've ever built. Translation. I thought, I've just turned my villa into the bastard child of Black Mirror and B&Q. Still, he was right. It was perfect. I almost felt sorry for them. Almost. Then Sunday arrived. May 4th, Kelly's big day. Her moment of triumph. My moment of theater. I stationed myself in my study. 3 monitors glowing with feeds from Tahoe, coffee steaming beside me like I was prepping for a Formula One race. The lake glittered, the trees swayed. Birds flitted about. Picture postcard serenity. Shame it was about to get shredded into a psychological war zone. At exactly 2:28 p.m., a dark blue minivan appeared on the road, punctual to the minute. That was Kelly for you. Punctual when it came to betrayal, useless when it came to birthdays. The van slid into the driveway like it already owned the place. Kelly hopped out first, smug as a cat stretching on someone else's sofa. Palmer followed, lumbering out with that earnest helpfulness of a man who's never had an original thought. And then Carl and Margaret, the in-laws. God help me. They looked exactly like I imagined, retirement-aged, smug, and moving with the greedy anticipation of people convinced the universe just handed them a free villa. Margaret clutched a handbag and a pair of slippers, because of course she did. Why just visit when you can immediately redecorate the victim's life in beige? They bustled about unloading boxes, the efficiency of people who'd done this before, like squatters with a moving schedule. This wasn't a weekend stay. This was colonization. Kelly pointed at the front door like she was Queen Victoria parceling out empire. Palmer nodded, eyes flicking to the windows as though deciding which room his mummy should have. Honestly, I half expected them to bring bunting. And then they saw it. Derek's masterpiece. The warning sign. Welcome to the house of the future. Enter at your own risk. It stood there, bold, professional, impossible to miss. A fair warning. A legal warning. A deliciously ominous warning. And like all warnings in horror stories, it would be promptly ignored. Margaret clocked the sign first. Face like thunder, lips pursed. The full headmistress caught a year 7, smoking, behind the bike, shed's expression. What is this nonsense? She barked, loud enough for Derek's hidden mic to practically applaud. Carl waddled over, squinting like the letters were personally insulting him. Probably some prankster kid, Maggie. Just ignore it. Yes, Carl, because nothing screams local prank like a professionally mounted warning sign drilled into stonework with stainless steel bolts. Kelly, bless her, laughed. Sharp. Dismissive. The kind of laugh that says, I once stole your car keys for a week and blamed the dog. Oh, that's just Dad being weird. He probably thought it was funny. Right. Hilarious. I've always been the family comedian, famous for my slapstick routines in which I get robbed blind. Palmer, the eternal background extra in this tragic soap, shrugged and went straight for the door handle. The old man's always been eccentric. Let's just get inside. Yes, Palmer, nothing says eccentric like a fully wired up villa ready to psychologically dismantle intruders. But carry on. Margaret, however, was still mid-menopause rage spiral. She ripped Derek's carefully mounted sign clean off the wall with the strength of a woman who spent her entire retirement complaining about the council. The poor thing hit the ground with a clatter. There. I won't have some silly warning ruining our first day in our new home. Kelly clapped like it was the bloody curtain call at the West End. Perfect. You're absolutely right, Margaret. This is your house now. And there it was, my fair warning trampled into the gravel, as they waltzed into my villa like they were on location. Location. Home Invasion Edition. Palmer slid in the key. No doubt copied from the spare I gave Kelly back when I still believed she was my daughter and not the Wicked Witch of the Will. Lock turned, door swung, and boom, just like that, they'd colonized my villa. Make yourselves at home, Kelly chirped, voice bouncing through the entryway like it was already hers. Margaret actually gasped. Oh, it's even more beautiful inside. I can't believe how easy this was. Yes, darling. Burglary is practically effortless when the victim's your dad. The sensors clocked them instantly, for intruders, for bright red blips lighting up my tablet like a Christmas tree from hell. But no, I didn't push the big red button yet. I'm petty, not premature. Let them get comfy first. By 10 p.m., Kelly and Palmer were tucked up in their master bedroom, smug as squatters. Carl and Margaret had already collapsed into the guest room, blissfully unaware that their new home was about to waterboard them with its plumbing. My thumb hovered over Derek's masterpiece of a control app. One tap and the house would go from Airbnb chic to The Shining. Amazon Alexa edition. So I tapped. Instant chaos. Every light in the house started strobing like the world's worst nightclub. Faucets gushed open like Niagara Falls. Showers screamed alive. Bedrooms flooded with water and light until it looked like Studio 54 had mated with B&Q. Kelly shot up in bed, hair wild, eyes darting. The smug confidence drained faster than the villa's water pressure. Palmer flailed beside her, doing his best impression of a man who's never solved a problem in his life. And then came Derek's piece de resistance, the voice assistant. Attention. Unauthorized intrusion detected. You are not the owners of this house. Leave immediately. Imagine Siri, but with the personality of an executioner. Margaret's scream carried across the speakers as the projectors kicked in, shadows stretching, writhing, moving with unnatural purpose. This place is haunted, she shrieked, while Carl stood around like he was waiting for someone to bring him a sandwich. Palmer, desperate, sprinted for the breaker box like it was going to save him. Joke's on him. Derek's battery backup could have powered a small village, or one very bitter father's grudge, for days. Doors locked, lights pulsed, shadows closed in. And Kelly, my darling manipulative, overconfident Kelly, stumbled through the hall muttering, "This is impossible. Houses don't do this." "Oh, but darling, this one does." Carl finally crumpled into a chair, pale and broken. "We need to get out of here." Palmer's reply was a frantic, sweaty, "I'm trying." Spoiler, he wasn't. 6 hours in, the villa was still going full exorcist, every system firing at once. Lights, water, shadows, whispers. The whole sensory overload package. My perfect revenge, gift wrapped in neon, static, and dripping taps. Kelly was in the middle of a living room, spinning round like she'd just discovered interpretive dance. Only instead of applause, she had Derek's shadows leaping across the walls and every tap in the house having a nervous breakdown. This was the same woman who once threw me off my own property. Now she looked like a lost year 9 on a geography trip who'd taken the wrong turn at the gift shop. By dawn, the locks finally clicked open. Palmer practically ripped the door off its hinges, while all 4 of them legged it to the minivan like contestants on Total Wipeout. Midlife Crisis Edition. And then my phone rang. 7:30, on the dot. Kelly's name glowing like divine comedy. I answered with my best concerned father voice, the one I usually reserve for GP appointments and awkward PDA meetings. "Kelly, good morning, sweetheart. How was your night at the villa?" Her voice came back like a Molotov cocktail hurled through stained glass. "What did you do, you sick, twisted old man?" Honestly, that tone. If I didn't know better, I'd think she just survived an exorcism instead of a mildly inconvenient light show. She ranted about Margaret and Carl being traumatized, which, frankly, was the most life those two had shown in years. I slipped into gentle confusion. "Kelly, what are you talking about? What happened up there?" "Don't you dare play innocent with me." The house went insane. Lights, water, voices. I almost clapped. Derek's programming deserved a standing ovation. "That sounds terrifying," I said, ladling concern like custard. "Did you call someone for help?" "We called the police." Of course they did. Nothing says rational problem solving like dialing 999, because your tap's having a mood swing. They said it was probably just a malfunction. And there it was. Legal. Deniable. Delicious. "Well, that's a relief," I replied reasonably, like a man discussing the weather. Kelly screamed, so loudly I nearly dropped the phone into my tea. Carl collapsed. Margaret won't stop crying. Ah, the tears of the entitled. My new favorite beverage. I even clicked my tongue sympathetically, like a vicar consoling someone about losing a cat. These modern systems can be unpredictable. "Stop mocking us," she wailed. Which, frankly, only made me want to mock harder. She accused. I played dumb. She whispered threats like she was auditioning for Macbeth. I reminded her I can barely work the telly remote. All true, except when I'm avenging property theft. Funny that. She pushed, I dodged. She sobbed, I cooed. The symmetry was art. For 3 years, I'd been the one phoning, begging, and being dismissed. Now she was on the line, unraveling, and I had never sounded calmer. Finally, she spat it out. "We're never coming back. The villa is yours. We don't want anything to do with that cursed place." That's probably wise, I murmured, sipping the victory like hot Earl Grey. Sometimes houses just don't like strangers. She threatened to prove it was me. I nearly laughed into the receiver. Prove what, exactly? That she'd lost a battle against indoor plumbing? Her voice went quiet, hollow, beaten. I underestimated you. Yes, Kelly, I said softly. You did. Line dead. I set the phone down like it was fragile crystal, leaned back in my leather chair, and basked in the glow of the monitors showing my perfectly serene villa. Revenge doesn't need fireworks. Just patience and Wi-Fi. Of course, 5 minutes later, the phone rang again. Kelly. Persistent, I'll give her that. I turned it off. Nothing kills the high of victory like unnecessary admin. By Tuesday, Palmer was back with a rental truck and a locksmith who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Probably in A&E passing kidney stones. They poked at Derek's system for 30 minutes before giving up. These aren't regular locks, sir, the locksmith sighed. You'd need a tech specialist. And who was the only such specialist within 200 miles? Derek. My Derek. The man who could make a fridge scream in Latin if you asked nicely. The locksmith scarpered. Palmer sulked. Kicked the doorframe. Looked like a man who'd lost to an inanimate object. Spoiler. He had. And I sat in San Diego watching the cameras, sipping my tea, and waiting for the inevitable. Because if there's one thing Kelly hates more than losing, it's admitting she has. Kelly and Palmer arrived at my front door at 8 p.m. sharp, stomping up the drive like bailiffs with anger management issues. 30 years in construction had taught me the look, that defeated shuffle of people who've already lost, but still fancy one last dramatic scene. Kelly's knock rattled the bloody doorframe. Charming. Open up. We need to talk. Translation. We've got nothing left but volume control. I opened the door as serenely as if I'd been expecting the milkman. Kelly barreled straight past me, Palmer right behind her, fists clenched like he'd just discovered he had hands. Cut the innocent act, Kelly snapped. Palmer couldn't change the locks because you've turned the villa into some kind of high-tech fortress. Oh, you've noticed, I said, sweet as custard. Yes, smart security systems are very fashionable. Brilliant at keeping out, well, people like you. Palmer loomed over me, attempting intimidation via height. Either you stop this game and give us the villa, or forget you have a daughter. I blinked. Is that meant to be a threat or an early Christmas present? Kelly, bless her, tried the legal card. We'll sue you for harassment, for emotional distress, for everything. Oh yes, I nodded gravely. Because the police finding absolutely nothing wrong really strengthens your case. Her voice cracked like an old vinyl. You know what you did? No, darling. What you know is that you didn't get your way. Subtle difference. Palmer switched to his favorite tactic, pity via mansplaining. Look, Fred, be reasonable. You're old and alone. What do you really need with such a big villa? Ah, the recycling bin of arguments. Exactly what Kelly had said on the phone. Honestly, if you're going to plot my downfall, at least bring new material. Then Kelly detonated. Fine. You'll never see any grandchildren. When I have kids, they'll never know you existed. You'll die alone, just like Mom. 3 years ago, that would have gutted me. Now, I barely flinched. Mainly because I was too busy noting the irony. You'll die alone, said while standing in my living room, trying to rob me. Funny, I said, because you forgot to ask my permission before giving away my villa. Kelly shrieked like a kettle left on boil. We'll ruin you. Destroy your reputation. Turn everyone against you. Palmer nodded furiously beside her, like a Poundland bodyguard. I tilted my head. Are you quite finished? Or do you want to start on the weather forecast too? Kelly stepped closer, hissing. We're just getting started. You have no idea what we're capable of. Oh, but I did. Their talents included bad acting, half-baked threats, and the emotional range of damp cardboard. Unfortunately for them, they'd just given me all the ammunition I needed. Well, I murmured, with just enough menace to make Palmer take a step back. I suppose we'll see who's actually capable. Kelly faltered, then snapped, We're leaving. But this isn't over. I smiled, already shutting the door. Actually, I think it is. Back in my study, Elizabeth's photo sat quietly on my desk. Tomorrow, I'd make phone calls. Marcus Chen, a few others. Kelly thought this was war. She'd forgotten the golden rule. Amateurs play tactics. Professionals play strategy. Wednesday morning. Bradley Walsh's conference room. 15 years as my notary, polished oak table. Legal folders stacked like evidence in a particularly dull murder trial. Kelly and her entourage filed in with all the confidence of people holding Uno cards and calling it a royal flush. She sat opposite me, jaw tight, Palmer doing his best arms crossed tough guy pose. Margaret and Carl sat behind them, still looking like survivors of a bad escape room. Cut the formalities, Kelly snapped. We want the villa signed over to Palmer's parents. Now, actually, I said, with the kind of calm that ruins people's mornings, that's impossible. Palmer leaned in, all fire and fury. Nothing's impossible if you just sign the papers. You misunderstand. I nodded to Bradley, who cleared his throat like a man about to enjoy his job far too much. Mr. Martinez no longer owns the villa. He transferred ownership on Monday morning to the Second Chance Foundation for Homeless Assistance. The transfer is complete and entirely legal. The silence was exquisite. Kelly's face drained of color. Palmer's eyes bulged. Margaret whimpered. I almost clapped. That's impossible, Kelly spat. Oh no, sweetheart. What's impossible is you grasping the concept of legal ownership. I owned it. I transferred it. End of fairy tale. Palmer sagged like a deflated bouncy castle. But we had an agreement. Kelly said. Yes, Bradley said smoothly. But Mr. Martinez can't transfer what he doesn't own. The foundation owns the property now. Kelly shot to her feet, chair screeching. You can't do this to us. We need that villa. You tried to steal it, I reminded her. This way it actually helps people. Revolutionary idea, I know. Margaret piped up, trembling. But where will we live? Oh, I imagine you'll manage. The same way you expected me to manage when you tried to evict me from my own house. Kelly clutched the table, voice breaking. This is just spite. Pure revenge. I met her eyes. No, this is justice. And it's permanent. Palmer looked like he'd just calculated his bank balance mid-hangover. Our future, we counted on that villa. Perhaps, I said sweetly, next time you should ask permission before planning your life around other people's property. Bradley laid out more paperwork like he was hosting some sort of legal bake sale. The transfer includes a lifetime usage clause for Mr. Martinez. He retains full access until his death. Kelly practically vibrated. So you still get to use it. Nothing's changed. Oh, everything's changed, I corrected sweetly. You just don't get to touch it. Ever. Which, frankly, is the best change of all. Then Carl spoke for the very first time. A miracle, honestly. His voice was tiny, like he'd just realized he'd spent years backing the wrong horse. So we get nothing? After everything. Yes, I nodded. After attempting to rob me with emotional blackmail? Correct. You get absolutely nothing. Try not to spend it all at once. Kelly slumped into her chair like a soap opera star after the big reveal. When did you do this? Monday morning, I said, sipping my water. Right after your little technological exorcism at the villa. The timing hit her like a frying pan. Every scream, every threat, every will ruin you forever speech had been pointless. Delicious, Palmer whispered. So, you were always planning this. I was always planning not to be mugged by my own family, I replied. Silly me. Kelly stared at the documents, as though glaring might make ink legally reversible. The charity thing. It's just a trick, right? You're still in control somehow. Bradley stepped in, deadpan. The Second Chance Foundation is legitimate. The transfer is genuine and irrevocable. Palmer scowled. So you win. Is that what you wanted to hear? I sighed. What I wanted was silence. But since you dragged me here, yes, I win. Congratulations for finally noticing. That was the last straw. Kelly cracked like a cheap wine glass. You've destroyed our future. Palmer's parents have nowhere to go. They can go anywhere, I said, except my villa. Try Airbnb. Revolutionary concept. Margaret started crying into her cardigan. Carl patted her shoulder with the expression of a man who had absolutely no idea how he'd ended up in this plot. Kelly stood shakily, her grand finale looking more pantomime than Shakespeare. Come on. There's nothing left to discuss. I couldn't resist. Kelly. She turned, face knotted with rage. Next time you try manipulation, remember, business experience beats emotional terrorism. Every time. The door clicked shut behind them. Glorious silence. Bradley leaned back, smug as a cat in cream. Masterfully planned, Fred. 30 years of contracts, I said. Always keep an exit strategy. And preferably a spare pen. The next morning I drove up to Lake Tahoe. No ambushes, no hysterical phone calls. Just me, the road, and the creeping suspicion I'd aged 10 years in 3. For the first time in 3 years, actually felt content. Disgusting, really. The villa greeted me like an old friend. I let myself in with my key. No need to check for intruders or surprise exorcisms. Just peace. First job. Strip out Derek's tech circus. Cameras down, motion sensors out, Alexa gagged and stuffed in a box. 2 hours later, the villa was back to normal. A house, not a haunted funfair. Coffee in hand, I sat on the terrace where Elizabeth and I had once watched mornings unfold without drama. The lake sparkled, mountains nodded politely, and for the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for the next ambush. And here's the kicker. The real victory wasn't the charity paperwork or the gadget-fueled ghost show. It was learning the magic word I'd forgotten. No. No to manipulation. No to surrender disguised as love. No to being emotionally mugged by my own daughter. It turns out saying no isn't cruelty. It's therapy. Elizabeth's voice echoed in my memory. Be patient with Kelly, she's grieving. Lovely advice, but she never meant let her rob you blind. She married a builder, not a doormat. Kindness without self-respect? That's not kindness. That's weakness dressed up in a cardigan. So yes, the villa was gone, technically. But so was the version of me who confused love with capitulation. That man's been evicted permanently. The phone stayed silent. Kelly had finally realized you can't sue someone for being smarter than you. The war was over. They lost. I recovered. As the afternoon sun warmed my face, I finally accepted it. Sometimes peace comes not from reconciliation, but from distance. Sometimes love needs boundaries, not begging. And for the first time in 3 years, I felt like myself again. And frankly, he's a lot harder to rob.